Hello everyone, in this video I would like to discuss the town hall that former President Donald Trump recently had on CNN. And in doing so, allow me to be a bit more specific. I don't want to discuss the entirety of that event and what happened. I haven't watched it in its entirety. I've pretty much only seen clips of it. If you haven't seen it, I honestly recommend you do the same. There's no need for you to watch the entirety of that drivel. It's complete nonsense, more or less what you'd expect. But there was one question that the host or moderator, whatever you would call her, asked Donald Trump that I would like to analyze in this video. And it's not so much his response or what he had to say, or, I'm not making this video to offer him any sort of praise. Definitely doesn't deserve much of that in the slightest. But what I'm making this video for is to sort of analyze the psyche of American media, the leading American politicians, and the West at large as they became this sort of monolith, basically echoing the same sentiment on the war uh, in Ukraine and how that war is going and how it should be preserved or continued, as they so eloquently tell us at every chance that they get. And so I want to take a look at that in this video. So firstly, I'm going to play for you a short clip of Donald Trump being asked about the war in Ukraine, and check out his interesting response.
I was impeached by a crazy woman named Nancy Pelosi.
But the question here is, would you give Ukraine weapons and funding if you were elected?
I would sit down. Let me just put it a nicer way. If I'm president, I will have that war settled in one day, 24 hours.
How would you settle that war in one day?
Because I'll meet with Putin, I'll meet with Zelensky. They both have weaknesses and they both have strengths. And within 24 hours, that war will be settled. It'll be over. It'll be absolutely over.
Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I don't think in terms of winning and losing. I think in terms of getting it settled so we stop killing all these people and breaking down this country. Now,
well, that was quite interesting for one main reason. The reason is that his answer differs from the answers that we've been getting from our current leading politicians, from the Joe Bidens, from the Kamala Harrises, from the fill in the blank, from the leaders of the European countries that are towing the line as the American government spearheads and leads the pack as they usually do, and the rest of their allies trail not too far behind, basically echoing the same sentiments that the U.S. espouses, even if it is to their detriment. And so the sentiment is that it's this war between good and evil, good and bad, and that Russia must be tanked. They must be destroyed. Vladimir Putin, we have to coup him. He needs to be replaced. And we should send billions of dollars, as we've done. We, as in them, not me and you, we have no power nor, decision-making power to, make any of these things happen. But they've been continuing with basically the same policy, which is give money and weapons to Ukraine. And they've been giving billions of dollars to Ukraine and weapons and all the rest of it to help them with their defense against the invasion, as they would call it, of the Russian military. And the woman there asked Donald Trump, basically, it's interesting. So she wants an answer to two main questions. And it's interesting because, when you think about Donald Trump and the whole, Putin's puppet nonsense and the Russiagate ridiculousness, how they tried to paint him as some sort of, I don't know, Russian, I don't do good, whatever you want to call it. He was Putin's puppet, and they try to associate him with Russia. They think that hurts him negatively. It doesn't really. Poll after poll show that the American people have a much more deep hatred for China than Russia. The propaganda against China is just that much stronger and more potent. You shouldn't hate China, by the way. They've never done anything to you to harm you. That's an entirely different subject for an entirely different video. But she thinks, the interviewer does, and so does many people like her, think that it's somehow a dig at Mr. Trump to associate him with Russia, or that he's on good terms with Vladimir Putin. And so she asked him questions like, would you give Ukraine weapons and funding, or do you want Ukraine to win this war? Notice the line of questioning. Just notice. Would you give them billions of dollars in weapons as Americans starve back home, people can't find a house, people can't pay their bills, their mortgages, drowning in debt, the student loans, and all the rest of it. But we're sending all these weapons to Ukraine. We're funding them, the neo-Nazis down there, and for what? To weaken Russia, to fuel the proxy war. These things aren't discussed in mass media, but what you will hear is ultimatums where you're basically not given any kind of other option other than, do you want Ukraine to win the war, and would you give weapons and funding to them? Now, Donald Trump's answer is interesting because it's different than what you would receive from a Joe Biden. Joe Biden would, unabashedly say, yes, we will continue to give weapons and funding. You don't even need to ask him the question because he said it so many times, you know what the answer is going to be. But Donald Trump says, we work out a peace deal. Something that should happen, that should have happened a long time ago, and that the U.S. has been directly against, of course, Zelensky as well. If you have been listening to what he's been saying this entire time. Do you want Ukraine to win the war? He says, I don't think about it in terms of winning and losing. And to be completely honest with you, I don't want to entertain for a second how Donald Trump would be reacting to the Russia-Ukraine conflict if he was in office theoretically or hypothetically for a second term. I don't like dealing with things that have no chance of happening. He's not the president right now, so him being able to deal with this has no chance of happening. He's a spectator, much like the rest of us in this very moment. If you want to go off how he was as president, well, let's go off how he was as president. Well, he was the same as the past presidents. He fueled the war machine, and he gave money to the military-industrial complex. Quite the same. So if he was president here, who knows? He might be handling it the exact same way as Joe Biden is, but he's in the position that he's in, and he can say these things. And who knows? If he was in a different position, he might say something different. I have no idea. I'm not going to speculate on it, but he said what he said, and it is what it is. But what I want to focus on in this video, or what I hope I've been focusing on, and what I've hopefully made clearer and easier to understand, is that they are pushing us in one direction here. Okay, the West and their phony leaders and corrupt leaders are pushing us in one direction, and that direction is the one in which everything associated with Ukraine is good, and everything associated with Russia and anything allying with them is evil. And they are preparing. They are already engaged in a war, a proxy war with Russia, but they are preparing for an even larger phenomenon with the People's Republic of China, and basically anyone that would like to step in their way to upend U.S. hegemony, to upend the power and authority that the U.S. holds, in its grip on the world, basically. And you get to see it in questions like what was asked to Donald Trump during this town hall. These things mean something. When you ask a former president, would you give Ukraine weapons and funding, knowing that there's neo-Nazis on the ground there? When you ask him, do you want Ukraine to win this war? What does win exactly mean? Is it the extermination of Russia and its people? Is it just the Russians leaving Ukraine? Like, what is a win? And if you listen to what the military generals are saying, they know there is no win for Ukraine without giving up certain portions of land, without giving up pretty much anything at this point. There is no defined victory with everything going out the way that they would want it to. But anyway, this is something that I thought was incredibly important to briefly discuss and go over, because it really just goes to show you the groupthink that's going on. And when there's one bad apple or a few that decide to think differently, this is how they react.